Hey everyone, welcome back to the next film. We are back in the studio, well, my office, and I was at the Alliance of Women Directors Back to Set Working Directors Intensive this weekend. I got to cover the event, and it was my second time going to Back to Set. I went last fall as an attendee, and I loved it so much. I felt so inspired and walked away with so much knowledge and new connections. And so this year I was really excited to not only cover it, but I got to talk to all the panelists and speakers and kind of get like an inside scoop. And I get to share a lot of that with you, which is cool. So I get to essentially bring you inside the room and share the highlights and my favorite moments and my honest opinions. So let's dig in. So if you haven't heard of Back to Set, I highly recommend it, but we're going to dig into why I recommend it. But just to start, I'm going to read you the exact description of it, just so I'm not trying to paraphrase it. It is a 2-day craft and career symposium bringing together working directors and industry leaders for hands-on workshops, masterclasses, panels, and networking designed to help filmmakers sharpen their skills, expand their networks, and advance their careers. One thing that I really love about Back to Set is there is different types of panels. There's not just like, the question and answer ones or talking about like one specific project. There's also workshops. Like they brought in a casting director this year and we got to see live auditions and they bring up an actual director because you can submit your scripts to get workshopped or to like do a casting session. And so we got to watch like a live casting session essentially. And they brought in like 4 different actresses who would be good for the role. And it was really cool to watch the director and the casting director share their notes with all of us. And I mean, I always just love like sitting in on the casting process and watching how people just do it differently and bring different takes on it or try things. And then, what directions the director or casting director might give. Yeah, and it was just really cool to like kind of sit in on the room all together. So there was that. There was another workshop where they did a pitching panel, and I think it was 2 directors got to pitch themselves or their project, and then we got to hear what notes were given from the panelists.
I want to know who they are before they pitch me their project. So like where they're from, what their interests are, what drives them, what their passion is, hobbies. And then I always like when people ask me, what are you looking for? So like at Mandalay, we have a mandate. I'm looking for specifically, budgeted films, specific genres. And a lot of times people will just start pitching me something, but it's like so far away from what I'm actually looking for. And I, I feel like that's a miss. I always like if you can kind of frame it, it's like the internal character struggle of Euphoria meets, the antagonizing world of Handmaid's Tales, like, however it is, because it can be pretty broad if you just say it's like, this show meets this show and they had a baby.
I also loved that their panels this year and last year were different. I think it's, if they're expecting to bring back returning people, I think it's nice that they're like updating it or bringing in new guests. So I felt like this year was more balanced when it came to film and TV. I felt like last year was maybe a little more TV focused. Just AWD has a lot of working TV directors, which is obviously really great. And I'm definitely interested in TV, especially like, like in HBO or like limited, like something that feels more like a film. But at this time in my career, I'm just way more interested in film. So I liked that there was a little more balance this year. I feel like they really went out with the keynote speakers. Like we had Paul Feig, if I'm saying that right, who's directed Bridesmaids, The Housemaid, A Simple Favor, created Freaks and Geeks, like so many credits. So and that was really exciting. And he had amazing things to say, which I will share with you.
So I was like, dig into your soul, find the story you have to tell it in a really figure out an interesting way to tell it, and then shoot it. And shoot it, I mean, I was a big Jim Jarmusch fan. The first movie I saw by him was Stranger to Paradise. Every scene is one shot, and it works fantastic. Like, don't be so hung up on technical stuff. Just find a great story. Get good performances too. Everything is a calling card these days, and now with the internet, which is so great, that we have people that just are looking at stuff on the internet all the time. I discovered actors on the internet. We've discovered filmmakers on the internet, but that's why I was like, make sure what you put out there is really good. Test it with your friends, test it with people you don't know, test it with people you don't. I Friends and family screenings are worth, so I just don't say it. Because everybody likes who you do if they know you. But just be hard on the stuff and would be inventive to get it out there. And it was kind of a disaster. Like, it just didn't work. And I realized from that point on, like, if I don't bring the studio into the process, I'm just fighting against an ally. Why would they want my movie to bomb? They want to be good. So from then on, daily, my dailies go direct into the marketing department every night. Because I say, like, go ahead, because they'll cut these kind of trailers or things, and sometimes it gives me an idea. Like, I send to my editor and go, like, that's a great gag. I didn't think of, like, we kind of made a B-side gag or something. And so now they've become sort of my greatest ally.
And they had Bella Thorne, who obviously is an actress and was a kid actress, but has now stepped into writing and directing. And she had incredible things to say and maybe resonated with me the most. She's a badass. Yeah, it made me more emotional than I thought it was going to. And I'll show you my favorite moments.
One of the things I love is even, at your young age, you had 20 years in this industry. And thinking about career longevity, and ideally, I think a lot of people, and most of us in the tournament, I don't want to speak for you, is like, we want to be here for the long term. So what are lessons for really making a positive long-term life in a creative industry, and things that helped you along the way?
If you get up every day and you still keep trying, that's long-term. If you get up every time, every you want to pussy you out, that's people. Nobody can beat that. No one can beat that. No one can beat you. No one can beat you at your best self. And we're never always our best self, but we try to be. So we keep getting up, even when we're getting beat down. And that surely is longevity. I've seen so many child actors that I have been friends with or known when I was like 8, 9, 10, 12. And then they dropped off the face of the earth, and you're like, will you ever see that actor again? And then, boom, pop right up on the biggest TV show. You're like, well, now look at that. And that only took 15 more years, okay? That's longevity. You kept going. You did not give up. That is longevity. You're directing, you're running a set, essentially. What you do and the vibe you give off is what's going to feed into the crew and into the actors. So if you've got a funky vibe, sir, keep it over there. You know what I mean? Over here to the filmmaking process. And vulnerability and sharing stories. I try and bring that out as much as I can with my crew, with my actors, by sharing it first myself and giving them that open door that we can be vulnerable in this place. This is where art is made, is in that vulnerability.
And Katie Aselton, who is like, the indie queen, her husband, Mark Duplass, the indie king. And I just love too that she's been doing this a long time. She started with like The Puffy Chair and Black Rock, and has, just made 2 features that premiered at South by this year and last year. And so it's cool that she has all this experience over, all the fluctuations of the industry. So listening to her experience and her feelings about it all was really inspiring and, just really relatable. I think just like a big takeaway was, she had taken some time away. She had some kids, and just the fact that like, she was really feeling that need to make something again. And they just like went out and did it, and like didn't like wait to raise millions of dollars. And like, even though they've gotten, they're very established and like much larger than when they first started, like they still went back to the basics and, was making like scrappy indie films. And so I think that is just something that's cool. They're still not waiting for the cavalry.
We've had these wonderful sort of dances with bigger productions, whether it be on TV or in movies, and it's been wonderful. But we find ourselves sort of always going back to the puppy chair as like the thing that we crave, that feeling that we're chasing. And so for me, I had let a lot of time go between my second movie, Black Rock, and making another feature. I had been on a TV show. I'd had my second child. I had 1,000 reasons why I was waiting. And so I turned to Mark and I said it. I just like creatively need this. Like I need something that feels like what we used to do. And he was like, great, well, let's write. And so we were on a road trip. We are coming back from Big Sur. We are driving that long, like 5.5 hours, 6 hour drive home. And me opened up my notes app on my phone and we started telling this story.
There was an indie film panel that I loved so much. The guests, Olivia, Tina, and Jennifer, were all incredible filmmakers, had so many things of wisdom and advice and just insight that they shared that I loved. It was really relatable, really reassuring. Tina specifically shared a story of just essentially having PTSD from the marketing and distribution of her film, which I just, again, I just really felt that. Because you can make a really great film and believe in it and, get all these good reviews. And don't get me wrong, like a bunch of good things come of it, but it just, when it's not like marketed or pushed in the way that you feel the film deserves, it's heartbreaking. And so I really felt for her. I will say though, the one thing is that the films that they were all talking about, the two of them were made in 2008. And the other one was 2015, which was like when Netflix had an indie film division, which I actually didn't even know that they did. But I do think so much has changed in indie film since then. I mean, so much has changed in just like the last 5 years alone. So it felt a little less useful, I think. Like I said, they were incredible speakers. They've gone on to do incredible things in terms of like, they've done a lot of TV. They've made more incredible films for studios like Searchlight, Netflix. I mean, Olivia Newton, she made Where the Crawdads Sing for Hello Sunshine, and I love that film so much. But all to say is that to hear them talk about indie film and these films in 2008 and 2015, it was just a completely different time. Like money was different, like the way that films were being put out and invested in and all these things. Like it's just in such a different state right now that is inspiring, as insightful as it was. It just didn't feel as useful or helpful, I think. So maybe next year we'll have people who are like literally in the trenches right now in indie film.
I only need one yes. And that's kind of the thing for me going along with my career. And also, there are things that Gore said, you said no to me, it ended up being a blessing. Because it's opened the door for something else. Things come for you when they're supposed to come. And I know it's so hard to think, like, oh my God, that's so meta. So it's true that when a project is meant for you, it will come to you. And it will come to you at the right time. Right. It might not be when you want it. It won't be very much. But I think the thing is you have to do, I think is for everybody that's been saying no, somebody out there will say yes. And I think you have to, it is hard to sometimes believe in yourself. It is hard to take no. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and say a no doesn't hurt. But at the same time, okay, great. That person is missing out. And there's nothing like having some success and then seeing that person like, yeah. And it's like they missed out. And that's okay. And I had no animosity about it. I don't have time for that in my scare. I had to keep going. What was a challenge was when a shot doesn't work, no one will let it go. I was just so dead set on one wire. And this is why I burned my film. I packed short ends left, so which I sold, by the way, to get through post. So I didn't run out. But it was 12 takes of one damn shot. Just because I was like, okay, we'll get it. I'll wait focus buzz. I'll wait this. Why? And then that's me realize it too. You get 2 wires. But your editor cannot control pacing. I don't get coverage. And I saw that I'm looking at it in the edit now. I so want to cut it to something else and I didn't have it. So that was me just stuck in a vision and not being able to see outside.
This year, they also had a panel between a director and a DP. And I remember last year they had a cinematographer panel as well. They had cinematographers come and talk about their art and craft. But I really appreciated this year. It was like a director cinematographer duo, and it was the writer, director, and DP of Josephine, which won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance this year. So big deal. And it was just really nice to hear about their insights and their relationship and how they work.
As a writer director, sometimes I'm always like, what's really important to see someone say, and what's important, what other lines can you just hear? That was a really helpful like exercise to see, like, no, you don't need to see this being said. You get down to it, it's like, what is this scene actually really supposed to do? We had such a shorthand after our first film together, and so we created a shot list, but we had really talked it through like so relentlessly that like if we made adjustments, it kind of was like easier to approach. Something is gonna happen inevitably, and so that it just kind of makes pivoting a little bit easier because you are so over prepared, you already know what needs it.
This year, they had a panel on directing for stunts and action that I very much appreciated and was really excited about, because this next film of mine deals with stunts, and not like your standard action, which this was more focused on, but just, stunts that have action in general. But they had two working directors who have a ton of credits, especially in like the action TV shows, like DC series and that type of genre. And they like showed us the previs and the storyboarding, and we literally got to watch like their previs and then how like the final scene, and they talked about their conversations and when they bring people in. And the key takeaway with that too is that like so much is done in pre-production and just prepping and having those conversations really early on. So that was a really fun panel.
I decided I wanted it to be with Steadicams and handhelds, so there was a combination there. They got the script. I talked through with Larry, who was our stunt coordinator, the feel that we wanted. So they went off and shot this. They ended up shooting all sides of every single side of the stunt. Some stunt coordinators will do that, but it is your job as a director to choose a strong POV. Whose story is this? And that goes to the emotion. So you will see in the final product I show you, we chose a strong POV. So I actually didn't end up shooting every single side of this, but it was great to have, so I became familiar with the work. Also, I'm just going to talk about this. Our stunt performers on this were amazing. All of them actually also performed to the stunt work. Logie did it along with our actors. One thing I think is important is always do a pass with your actors, but then a pass with your stunties. It allows you to get the performance and action sold so you have it covered. Okay, now we're going to this. This is something I always ask for. Not everyone does it. It's a slow motion walkthrough. So it allows you to see everything in slow-mo, kind of everything where each character is in the space. We did it on the stage, so I could figure out, okay, this is where my actors are in the space. This is where my camera's gonna go. Okay, if I put two cameras here, will I see the other camera or will I not? It allowed me to really prep ahead of time. I'm not gonna show you all of this because it's like 5 minutes of slow-mo walkthrough. But that's basically a style that I use to prep that I found very, very helpful.
Something new this year that wasn't at last year's Back to Set was there's a couple panels on microdramas and vertical filmmaking. And my friends did find this helpful, even if you're not interested in it. And I do think it's very important to include these in when you're just having like a director's intensive. It's obviously like a new market for directors. It's booming. And yeah, it's just like a new part of the industry. However, it's not my current interest, and I don't feel like it is my audience's interest. So I really needed coffee. And if you know me, I'm obsessed with coffee and I need my caffeine. And so I did choose to go get coffee instead of attend those panels. And honestly, I have no regrets. I said we were going to be honest in this. And since we're being honest, I have a hot take. So, and this is not just from this weekend. This is like many things built up, but I will say two people did mention it. And I'm just kind of sick of the advice that older generations are giving to younger generations. And that is, anytime they're asked what advice they would give to young filmmakers coming up, the answer is always, you have a 4K camera in your pocket. You have a phone. Go shoot something. You can go make a movie right now, like for nothing. If I had that technology when I was coming up. And it's just like, it's not useful. Like, we know, we all have phones, and we've also heard this advice so much. And it reminds me, honestly, of like when someone's like, how do I lose weight? And if someone's answer was like, count calories, work out. It's, yeah, no shit. Like, that's not actually, like, almost like, I feel like it's almost dismissive. Like, it's kind of saying like, you're just lazy. You just need to get off your ass and go make something. And I'm like, sure, there's definitely some truth to that. And don't get me wrong, like, you definitely should be like practicing. And when I was in school, we were out making films every week and acting on them and, you know, like shooting stuff. And like, we definitely were like using either like cheap cameras or our phones to make these things for school and, or like reels or footage or whatever. And so like, it was definitely an amazing thing and a learning experience to fail in like a small community and just like make things that no one would see or just like your classmates would see. But, you know, not like take it out into the world. So I'm definitely not discounting that advice, but it's just like for that to constantly be the advice again and again of like, you have a camera in your pocket. We all do. Why aren't you using that to go make a movie? There's a reason, you know? So I just feel like it's not the most helpful advice. I think there's, I think we should retire it because we know. There's really good merch. Like they have sponsors that show up and have tables. And I think last time I got like 3 months free of scriptation. And they also have a scriptation panel. And they did this last time, but in a different way. And I really appreciated both times they did it. I remember last year they did like a whole production meeting, which was really cool. It was like for an episode, and I think they were just breaking down a scene, but like around the table, it was like the director, the first AD, the production designer, costume designer, and I think one other person, maybe like locations or I forget. And they were using scriptation, which was like, you know, they're kind of like showing us how that works. But it was really cool to just like kind of sit in on that meeting and listen to the conversations that they were having with each other and how they broke it down. But this year they brought up a director who had submitted their script, and they had someone who was teaching a actual scriptation workshop and like how to tag things and how to, yeah, just like the workflow of it. So that was a cool thing to learn and sit in on. Oh, but merchandise, that's what I was going to say. My favorite merch is the Shot Deck stuff because I love Shot Deck. And I would happily be sponsored by them if they're listening. But I have so many Shot Deck hats. Shot Deck and Canva, my two favorite like things that you must have as a filmmaker. Also Canva if you would like to sponsor us. So my favorite thing about AWD's Back to Set is the community. I think that attending things like this is always worth it. It's worth the money. It's worth the time and energy, especially a community like Alliance of Women Directors. And I'm not getting paid to say this. First of all, this is not a sponsored video. So this is all my honest opinions. And there's just something really special about the community that they're growing and have already established over like, I think like 30 years. It's just really, really supportive and craft driven. And they're there for each other and happy to answer your questions and really support each other. And it's just like a really warm, inviting group of people. And what's really nice about this event too, because I go to all the panels and I love to go to film festivals and events and things like that. And my two favorite have been the Alliance of Women Directors Back to Set, and the Hello Sunshine, Shine Away. Both incredible. Both of them were 2-day events as well. And it's just like back to back to back panels. And I think there's something really cool when you're like essentially feeding your mind so much, but like it's just giving this great energy, and you have these people next to you during, you know, when you're listening to panels and the workshops, and then like you go to lunch together and you talk to the people, you know, at your table or before ahead of you, or before behind you in line. And then there's like little, you know, 10 to 15 minute breaks in between panels, and you get to meet more people and you run into people you know. And this year too, that now that I got to be behind the scenes and I got to meet, you know, some of the volunteers and talk to the speakers and panelists, and it's just a really incredible room to be in. And it's something that you definitely can't get from like an online course or from, you know, free resources on like YouTube or anything else online, or even like some of the like panels at film festivals and things like that. I just feel like it's such a inspiring, informative, warm room to be in. And that energy is definitely like worth having access to, because it really does like, light a fire under your ass and inspire you. And I think it just like helps remind you that you're not alone on this journey as well. So that's like why I will always go back. It is, yeah, an incredible 2-day event. Definitely recommend both days too, because I just love like, I don't know, I love those types of like you come back and, you might be like a little tired and your brain is like turning into rot because you're learning so much. But like after the few days you sit on it, like you have so many takeaways. What advice would you give to someone making their next film?
I would say write the film that you're afraid to make. I think sometimes it's very important that if there's a film that there's something that scares you about it, that's what you need to lean into. Because I do believe that's part of your evolution as a filmmaker. Like every time you make a film, you're learning something else, you're getting better. But if I'm afraid to tell a story, it must be something in there that is a truth that I really am afraid to get to. So this may be something I need to uncover, and probably no doubt it'll be the best film that you make.